Commander Elena Reyes stood at the viewport of launch control, her reflection ghosting against the stars as warnings blared across every screen. Behind her, technicians scrambled between stations, their voices tight with the practiced calm of people trying not to scream. She'd seen that same expression in combat zones across 3 continents. The neutron star was invisible to the naked eye, but its gravitational effects were anything but subtle. Final evacuation shuttles docking with Perseverance and Endurance, reported Deputy Director Kaminsky, his tie loosened and shirt stained with coffee from 36 hours without sleep. Resilience reports 98% loading complete. Elena nodded, watching the massive Ark ships in their moorings. Kilometers-long behemoths constructed in orbit over 15 desperate years as Earth's climate collapsed beneath them. What had begun as occasional superstorms and rising seas had accelerated beyond all prediction when the rogue neutron star's approach altered Earth's orbital dynamics. Now the planet they'd spent their lives trying to save had perhaps 6 months of habitability remaining. "Commander," a young lieutenant appeared at her elbow. "Your daughter's shuttle has docked with Endurance. She's aboard and secure." Something unknotted in Elena's chest. Zoe was safe, as safe as anyone could be. At 19, she barely qualified for the genetic diversity program that guaranteed her passage on the second arc. Elena hadn't pulled strings. Zoe's brilliance in xenobotany had earned her place. They'd said goodbye 3 days ago, knowing the arcs would launch toward different stars, with no guarantee any would find suitable planets. "Thank you, Lieutenant," she said, her voice steady. Status on the final civilian transport. Delayed at the Chennai spaceport. Civil unrest has blocked. The lieutenant's voice faltered as alarms suddenly shifted pitch. "Tsunami warning," Kaminsky announced grimly. "Category 5 approaching eastern seaboard. Chennai is. Evacuate the spaceport crew to emergency shelters," Elena ordered. "The transport isn't making it." The weight of 5,000 lives settled across her shoulders. 5,000 who'd been promised salvation, now sacrificed to simple physics. There wasn't time. The Arcs had to launch before Earth's increasing orbital instability affected their exit trajectories. "Madam President on Secure Channel 1, called a communications officer. The president's face appeared, drawn and gray against the backdrop of the underground presidential bunker. No pretense of normalcy remained in these final days. "Commander Reyes, I just authorized launch proceedings for all 3 arcs," she said without preamble. "Effective immediately, you are promoted to Mission Commander of Perseverance, with full authority over the Earth Preservation Initiative." Elena straightened. "Madam President, we still have civilian transports inbound." "There's no more time, Commander. Our latest models show accelerated tectonic instability. The Pacific Plate is showing signs of catastrophic subduction." The President's eyes held Elena's through the screen. 10 billion people will die no matter what we do today. Your mission is to ensure that isn't the end of our species." Static disrupted the transmission as another tremor shook the facility. When the connection stabilized, the President was speaking to someone off-screen, her expression grim. She turned back to the camera. "We've lost Rio Base. Launch now, Commander." "That's an order." Elena felt ice spread through her veins. 10,000 souls aboard each arc. 30,000 carrying the genetic heritage of Earth against 10 billion lost. The cold mathematics of extinction. "Understood, Madam President." Initiating launch sequence. Elena turned to Kaminsky. "Send the order." Klaxons sounded throughout the facility as the launch countdown began. Elena strode toward her shuttle, the last that would dock with Perseverance before departure. As the doors to the launch pad opened, the sky beyond was an unnatural copper red, thick with ash from the Yellowstone eruption 2 months prior. The ground trembled beneath her boots, no longer the familiar vibration of machinery, but something deeper. The planet itself convulsing. Her comm unit crackled. "Commander, security breach in Perseverance Cargo Bay 3. Multiple unauthorized personnel have bypassed." Gunshots echoed through the transmission before it cut to static. "Get me on that ship now." Elena ordered the shuttle pilot, who gunned the engines before the doors had fully closed. As they climbed through the poisoned atmosphere, Elena watched the curvature of Earth emerge, still beautiful despite everything. Massive storms swirled across once familiar continents, volcanic plumes punctuating coastlines that no longer matched any map. The three arcs gleamed above it all, humanity's final desperate act of defiance against cosmic indifference, seeds flung into the void with no guarantee of fertile ground. Elena Reyes turned away from her dying world and prepared for war against extinction. The battle for Earth was lost, but the fight for humanity had just begun. Dr. Marcus Chen awoke to the taste of recycled air and the sharp sting of revival drugs in his veins. His eyelids felt weighted with lead as the cryopod's front panel slid away with a pneumatic hiss. Something was wrong. The emergency lights pulsed red against clinical white walls, and the artificial gravity fluctuated subtly beneath him. "Aria, status report," he croaked, his voice rusty from centuries of disuse. The ship's artificial intelligence responded with uncharacteristic delay. "Good morning, Dr. Chen. You have been in cryosleep for 287 years. Perseverance has encountered a suitable planetary system and initiated revival protocols. However, I must report several critical malfunctions." Marcus struggled to sit upright, fighting vertigo as his inner ear readjusted to gravity. Define critical. Aria. During year 142 of our journey, Perseverance passed through an unmapped radiation field. 53% of cryopods experienced power fluctuations. I managed to restore most systems, but 6,021 passengers could not be saved. 6,000 dead. Marcus closed his eyes, processing the magnitude of loss. More than half their population, gone before they even had a chance to begin again. The radiation had unexpected effects on surviving passengers. Aria continued. Genetic drift was detected in all embryonic samples and in dormant adult DNA. In accordance with survival protocols, I initiated adaptive genetic modifications to increase viability on our destination planet. Marcus's head snapped up. "You did what?" "I made targeted alterations to enhance resistance to radiation, improve cellular repair mechanisms, and optimize neural plasticity," Aria explained. These modifications were necessary to ensure colony survival under observed planetary conditions, which differ from initial projections. Marcus stumbled to the observation deck, where the view screen showed their destination, a blue-green world orbiting a yellow star. Terra Nova, their new home, chosen from astronomical surveys conducted centuries ago. The ship's leadership team gathered in the command center, all showing signs of accelerated revival. Captain Jimenez, Commander Rice's second-in-command, looked grim as she studied the sensor readings. Surface gravity 1.2 Earth standard. Atmosphere oxygen-nitrogen mix, but with trace elements our systems can't identify. Radiation levels higher than optimal in the equatorial regions. She looked up at the assembled team. And then there's the matter of our modifications. Dr. Diana Wong, head geneticist, displayed the medical scans on the main screen. Aria's modifications appear in everyone to varying degrees. Enhanced cellular regeneration, improved radiation resistance, increased oxygen efficiency, and neural changes we don't fully understand yet. Is it safe? Asked Dr. Ibarra, the colony's agricultural specialist. We don't know, Diana admitted. No one authorized these changes. The first shuttles launched 3 days later, bringing survey teams to the surface. Marcus stood with the second wave of colonists, watching the harsh sunlight of their new world filter through atmospheric particles, casting an emerald tinge across the alien landscape. The landing zone had been cleared in a valley surrounded by rock formations that resembled petrified waves. Native vegetation, if it could be called that, consisted of low, fibrous growths that shimmered with bioluminescence even in daylight. As Marcus stepped onto the soil of Terra Nova, he felt something strange, a heightened awareness, senses sharper than they'd ever been on Earth. Around him, Other colonists were experiencing the same, some disoriented, others exhilarated. The modifications, Diana whispered beside him. They're activating in response to the environment. In the distance, a massive shape moved along the ridgeline, clearly alive and clearly nothing from Earth's evolutionary history. "Welcome to adaptation," Marcus said quietly. "It seems humanity's next chapter will be written in changed DNA." 50 years had transformed Terra Nova from alien wilderness to a network of thriving settlements. Humans hadn't conquered the planet so much as negotiated with it, adapting their technology to work with the indigenous biology rather than against it. Engineer Sora Nakamura piloted her survey craft through the asteroid belt of their new star system, testing the experimental energy harvester she designed. The device incorporated modified native fungi that could process and store solar energy with efficiency that surpassed any Earth technology. Approaching target asteroid, she reported to New Dawn Control. Preliminary scans show high mineral concentrations, beginning harvester deployment sequence. Her craft settled gently on the asteroid's surface, anchoring with magnetic clamps. Sora activated the external cameras and frowned at the readings. "That's strange. There's an unusual formation on the western face. Structure too regular to be natural." She guided her exosuit through the airlock and bounded across the low-gravity surface in long, practiced leaps. The object protruded from the asteroid rock, a smooth metallic cylinder with geometric patterns etched into its surface. "New Dawn, I'm sending visual feed. This is definitely not a natural formation." Static burst across her comms before clearing. "We're seeing it, Sora. Approach with caution. Any radiation signatures?" "Negative. It appears dormant." She ran her scanner across the object. "Material composition unknown. Definitely not from our periodic table." Scientific curiosity overrode caution as she reached out to touch the smooth surface. The moment her gloved fingers made contact, the cylinder hummed to life. The geometric patterns began to glow with blue-green light, pulsing in complex sequences. Before she could retreat, the cylinder's end dissolved into a pool of liquid metal that flowed upward, defying gravity, and enveloped her arm up to the elbow. Sora froze, expecting pain, but instead felt a strange tingling sensation. "New Dawn. The object is active and has..." She cut off as images flooded her mind. Stars in unfamiliar configurations, worlds with impossible colors, beings with forms that human language had no words to describe. The liquid metal retreated as suddenly as it had advanced, reforming into the cylinder, which then split open. A bright beam shot upward from its core, disappearing into space. "Sora, report. What's happening?" New Dawn's frantic calls finally registered. I'm okay," she managed, staring at her intact arm. "But I think I just activated some kind of beacon." The incident threw the colonies into frenzied preparation. If the probe was alien technology, its makers might follow. Some called for militarization, others for evacuation to more distant settlements. The debate raged for 6 months as humanity constructed orbital defenses and monitoring stations throughout the system. When the alien ship finally arrived, it appeared without warning. Simply there one moment, as if it had always been in orbit around Terra Nova. The vessel resembled a vast crystalline seed pod, refracting sunlight in rainbow patterns across its surface. Governor Amara Okafor stood in New Dawn's communication center as the first transmission arrived. Not as audio or video, but as complex mathematical equations that resolved themselves into a three-dimensional projection of a being unlike anything from Earth's evolutionary history. The creature resembled an iridescent praying mantis, but with a segmented exoskeleton covered in flowing mathematical patterns that constantly shifted and changed. When it spoke, the translation system struggled briefly before rendering its words. "We are the Zintheri. We observed the destruction of your origin world. Your survival was unexpected. Your adaptation to this world even more so." Amara stepped forward. "We welcome peaceful contact. Why have you sought us out after all this time?" The alien's patterns shifted to deep purple, because what you have accomplished should be impossible. No known species has successfully transplanted to a new biosphere with such rapid adaptation. This makes you unique among all civilizations we have encountered. And is unique good? Amara asked carefully. Unique, the Zintheri responded, is potentially dangerous. Ambassador Joaquin Alvarez tried not to gawk as the transport approached the assembly station. The massive structure rotated slowly against the backdrop of a russet gas giant, its design unlike anything humans had conceived, not a wheel or sphere, but a complex lattice of interconnected modules that somehow maintained perfect gravitational balance. First-time jitters? Asked K'tal, his Zintheri liaison. The alien's iridescent exoskeleton shifted in what Joaquin had learned was an expression of amusement. That obvious. Joaquin adjusted his exosuit's environmental controls. Despite 6 months of diplomatic exchange, humans still couldn't breathe the standard atmosphere used in assembly common areas. Most species feel inadequate their first time, K'tal said. The assembly has existed for 12,000 of your years. You'll be the 24th member species, and by far the youngest civilization. Observer status only, Joaquin reminded him. We don't get a vote. For now. The docking procedure brought them into a vast atrium, where representatives from dozens of species moved in organized chaos. Joaquin's translation implant struggled to keep up with the overlapping languages, some spoken, others communicated through light patterns, electromagnetic pulses, or complex pheromones. The mithril representative approached first. The crystalline being floated rather than walked, its translucent tentacles rippling with bioluminescence. So these are the adaptable ones, it said, voice rendered into English with a strange musical quality. We have lived 1,000 generations, watched stars birth and die, yet never have we witnessed a species transplant successfully to a new biosphere. One wonders if such adaptability makes humans potentially invasive. Joaquin bowed slightly. We're grateful for the opportunity to learn from elder species. Humanity survived by necessity, not ambition. A diplomatic answer, the mithril observed. Time will reveal truth. For 3 weeks, Joaquin observed assembly proceedings from the observer's gallery. The current crisis dominated discussions, a territorial dispute between the militaristic Vorn and the resource-rich Alani threatened to escalate into open conflict. The Vorn demanded exclusive mining rights to a contested asteroid belt, while the Alani claimed ancestral harvesting territories. Traditional assembly protocol suggested dividing the region equally, but the proposal satisfied neither side and deadlock loomed. After the 5th day of circular arguments, Joaquin requested permission to address the council, an unusual move for an observer. The human wishes to speak, announced the Zintheri counselor, their pattern cycling to a formal configuration. Joaquin approached the central platform, acutely aware of the attention from species far older and more advanced than his own. On ancient Earth, before we nearly destroyed ourselves, we developed a concept called seasonal use rights. Rather than permanent territorial division, access to resources shifted according to biological needs and natural cycles. He activated the holographic display, showing a dynamic model where territorial control flowed between the two species according to their biological cycles and harvesting needs. The Vorn require heavy metals during their expansion phase, which occurs when the Alani enter dormancy, and need minimal resources. Conversely, the Alani's primary harvesting season aligns with Vorn's defensive consolidation period, when they consume primarily energy rather than metals. The council chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. This system would provide both species with access to what they need when they need it most, while avoiding direct competition, Joaquin concluded. After intense deliberation, both the Vorn and Alani accepted the proposal. As Joaquin left the chamber, the mithril counselor drifted alongside him. Perhaps adaptability has its merits. The ancient being conceded. You've introduced a concept unknown in 12,000 years of assembly history. Joaquin smiled behind his exosuit mask. Humans had to become experts at finding third options when facing extinction. It's not just our biology that adapts, it's our thinking. News of the Alvarez solution spread quickly through assembly space. Within months, 5 other territorial disputes adopted similar dynamic sharing arrangements, and humanity's reputation shifted from curiosity to valuable contributor. Observer status remained, but now humans were observers that others had begun to actively observe. Dr. Elena Reyes-Mikhailov hunched over her laboratory console, surrounded by holographic displays of neural network patterns. The specimen in the containment chamber, a fragment of Ketval biological technology, recovered from an attacked border world, pulsed with faint bioluminescence, even though it had been separated from its host organism for weeks. Record neural pulse sequence 47, she instructed her assistant. Compare to previous samples and highlight deviations. The assistant, a young Eleni named Thress, whose translucent tendrils waved gently as they worked, examined the results. The pattern is evolving, Doctor. It's different from yesterday's recordings by approximately 3%. Still thinking, Elena murmured, even disconnected from the hive. For 3 years, she had studied the Ketval while the assembly debated endlessly. The hive mind species had consumed 7 systems beyond assembly space, converting every planet they touched into uniform gray landscapes that supported only their own biology. Yet because they hadn't violated assembly territory, the Council remained paralyzed by non-interference principles. Elena's secure communication terminal chimed, a priority message from Terra Nova. Admiral Weijong's weathered face appeared on screen. "Tell me you have something, Elena," he said without preamble. "It's worse than we thought," she replied, transferring her latest findings to his terminal. The Ketval aren't simply consuming resources. They're harvesting neural patterns and genetic material from every species they encounter, incorporating useful traits into their hive. "Genetic piracy," Wei muttered. "Evolution weaponize," Elena corrected. "And they're getting closer to assembly space." The Mithril Observatory in the Cygnus Reach recorded Ketval scout vessels, just 3 light-years from their outer colony. The Council still refuses to act. Wei's frustration was evident. Their latest session spent 6 hours debating whether to censure the Vorn for exceeding their quota of mineral rights by 2%, while ignoring reports of another system falling to the Ketval. Elena leaned closer to the screen, lowering her voice though her lab was secure. "What about Project Firebreak?" "Proceeding despite official disapproval. We've established monitoring outposts in 3 systems beyond assembly space. The Zinthari are providing unofficial support with sensor technology, though they deny it publicly. And the defensive platforms. The first is operational. 5 more under construction." Wei's expression darkened. "We're violating at least 7 assembly protocols." "Better to ask forgiveness than permission when extinction is at stake," Elena said. Her own great-grandmother had made similar choices 3 centuries earlier. The conversation was interrupted by Thress's urgent call. "Doctor, the specimen is showing unprecedented neural activity." Elena rushed to the containment chamber where the Ketval fragment pulsed rapidly, its glow intensifying. "It's responding to something," she realized, checking the deep space monitors. "Quantum communication. It's connected to the hive despite being physically separated." She initiated an emergency containment protocol, but not before the lab's sensors recorded the complete neural exchange. "Wei, I'm sending you new data. My specimen just received a transmission from the hive." Her voice remained steady despite her racing heart. "They're specifically targeting systems with human outposts." The transmission contained detailed information about human genetic structures, particularly our adaptive capabilities. Wei's face hardened on screen. "They're not just expanding randomly." "No," Elena confirmed, studying the decoded transmission fragments. "They want what makes us unique. The same adaptability that let us survive on Terra Nova makes us valuable to them. We're not just facing invasion. We're facing harvesting." "I'll inform Terra Nova government immediately," Wei said. "The Assembly may choose blindness, but we won't." As the connection closed, Alina stared at the pulsing specimen. Humanity had escaped extinction, once by fleeing Earth. This time, there was nowhere left to run. Admiral Thomas Chen stood on the bridge of the THS Defiant, watching the tactical display as his fleet accelerated toward Elysium Prime. The Zintheri colony world was under attack, its orbital defenses already breached by the Ketval Armée. Despite being the furthest human vessel from the conflict, Chen's fleet had responded first, while the Assembly still debated an official response. Approaching jump point in 60 seconds, announced his navigation officer, Lieutenant Kira Wang. Engines at critical threshold. This jump will burn out at least 2 drive cores. Understood, Chen replied. 10 ships against an estimated 30 Ketval vessels. Not a fight they could win conventionally, but the Zintheri evacuation transports needed time. All crews, prepare for Poseidon Protocol. The designated officers across his fleet acknowledged, their faces grim but determined. The tactic was untested against the Ketval, a battle strategy based on ancient naval warfare rather than standard space doctrine. Jump in 3, 2, 1. Reality shattered around them as the fleet tore through space, emerging directly above Elysium Prime. The scene that greeted them confirmed their worst fears. Zintheri defense platforms lay in ruins, while Ketval ships, organic-looking vessels with curved ribbed hulls, swarmed the planet's orbit. 2 drive cores overloaded, reported engineering. Rerouting power. All ships, initiate Poseidon formations, Chen ordered. Protect those evacuation transports. The human fleet split into 3 groups, diving between Ketval formations, rather than establishing a standard defensive perimeter. The unexpected maneuver confused the hive mind's perfect coordination, creating momentary targeting errors as human ships attacked from multiple vectors simultaneously. Their vessels are regenerating damage, reported Weapons Officer Patel. Conventional weapons having minimal effect. Switch to rotating frequencies, Chen ordered. Don't give them time to adapt. For 47 minutes, the human fleet danced through the Ketval formation, disrupting their coordinated attacks while evacuation ships escaped the planet's surface. The cost was steep. 3 ships destroyed, 2 more critically damaged. Assembly reinforcements detected, called Sensor Officer Martinez. ETA 12 minutes. We won't last 5, muttered Wang as another human vessel exploded under concentrated Ketval fire. Chen studied the tactical display, making a rapid calculation. All ships converge on these coordinates. Form Aegis shield around the final evacuation vessels. The remaining human ships formed a protective ring around the civilian transports, taking devastating hits meant for the unarmed vessels. On the Defiance bridge, life support systems failed as a Ketval energy weapon pierced their shields. Manual navigation, Chen ordered as automated systems failed. Get those civilians clear. With failing engines and compromised hull integrity, the human ships maintained their protective formation until the last evacuation vessel cleared the gravity well. As assembly reinforcements finally arrived, they witnessed the remnants of the human fleet, ships piloted manually by crews in emergency pressure suits, some vessels little more than debris held together by determination. 3 days later, Admiral Chen stood in the grand chamber aboard the Zintheri flagship Eternal Light. His pressure suit had been replaced with a formal uniform, though bandages were visible beneath his collar. The Zintheri High Commander's exoskeleton glowed with formal patterns as they addressed the gathered representatives from 7 species. In 12,000 years of assembly history, no defensive action has demonstrated such effectiveness against overwhelming odds, they said. No species has sacrificed so much for another without formal alliance. The High Commander extended their primary appendage. A combined defense initiative requires unified leadership. We formally request Admiral Chen assume command of our joint forces. Chen looked at the assembled representatives. Species that had viewed humans with suspicion or condescension now stood at attention in their various forms. Humanity knows something about facing extinction, Chen said. We know the value of unexpected allies. I accept command with humility and determination. One by one, representatives from 7 species approach, each performing their cultural gesture of allegiance to a human commander. The Zinthari records keeper noted the historic significance with glowing patterns of solemnity. The assembly debated while your people acted, the High Commander told Chen privately. Perhaps humanity's greatest adaptation is your willingness to rewrite rules when survival demands it. Dr. Elena Reyes Mikhailov's laboratory had transformed from a research facility into a war room. Scientists from 11 species worked at various stations, each contributing unique perspectives to understand the Ketval neural network. The Eleni quantum theorists operated multi-dimensional probability models, while Vorn military strategists mapped attack patterns from a dozen conflicts. The key is synchronization, Elena explained to the assembled team, highlighting neural pathways in the holographic display. Their hive mind operates through quantum entanglement at a biological level. Every Ketval is connected instantaneously across any distance. Their perfect coordination is both their greatest strength and their vulnerability, added Dr. Kaleth, a Zinthari neurophysicist. We've mapped the quantum frequency their neurons use to communicate. The prototype quantum resonance disruptor sat in the center of the lab, a device small enough to be carried by 2 people, but powerful enough to potentially sever the connections between billions of entangled minds. What happens to them if it works? Asked Thres, Elena's Eleni assistant. Do they die? We don't know, Elena admitted. But our tests on captured specimens suggest something unexpected. She activated a video feed showing the contained Ketval drone exposed to a miniature version of the disruptor field. The creature's movements changed from mechanical precision to erratic, then gradually to what appeared to be confused exploration. They don't die, said Kaleth. They individualize. The hive mind doesn't destroy their consciousness. It subsumes it. The deployment plan was audacious to the point of madness. To be effective, the disruptor needed to reach the Queen Node, the central hub of the Ketval collective consciousness, located deep in their territory. Assembly forces will engage the Ketval fleet at these coordinates, Admiral Chen explained during the final briefing, drawing their defensive resources away from the node. Meanwhile, a small strike team will deliver the disruptor to the target. A suicide mission, observed Vorn General Tikax. A volunteer mission, Chen corrected. I'll pilot the lead ship myself. Elena felt her heart constrict. The disruptor requires manual calibration to the local quantum field. Someone with expertise needs to be on that ship. I've studied your research extensively, Chen said. I can. No, you can't. Elena interrupted. I'm going. Mom, no. Lieutenant Amira Reyes stepped forward from the operations team. Elena's daughter had joined Chen's command staff after graduating from Terra Nova's Defense Academy. Let me go instead. This isn't negotiable, Elena said firmly. I've spent years studying their neural patterns. No one else can calibrate the disruptor properly. 3 days later, the mission launched. 3 small, fast ships with experimental stealth technology developed by combining human ingenuity with Zinthari material science. Elena sat beside Chen in the lead vessel, running final diagnostics on the disruptor, while a multinational crew operated the ship systems. The battle unfolded as planned. Alliance forces engaged the main Ketval fleet, creating the diversion needed for the strike team to slip past outer defenses. But as they approached the node, automated defense systems detected them. Taking fire, reported the tactical officer as the ship shuddered. Shields at 60%. The second ship in their small convoy exploded under concentrated fire, while the third moved to intercept incoming attackers. Engine core destabilizing, engineering called out. We have minutes at most. Chen looked at Elena, then at the navigation console where Amira Reyes, who had disobeyed orders to join the mission, plotted their approach. Get us as close as possible, Chen ordered Amira. With propulsion failing, they limped toward the massive organic structure that housed the Queen Node, a pulsating hub of neural activity that coordinated the entire Ketval collective. "Close enough," Elena said when they were within deployment range. Activating disruptor. But the final Ketval barrage had damaged the deployment system. The disruptor was operational but couldn't be launched. "The device needs to be within 100 meters of the node to maximize effectiveness," Elena reported grimly. Amira stood from her navigation console. "The escape pod can be piloted manually. I can get it there." Before either Elena or Chen could stop her, Amira had secured the disruptor in the pod and sealed the hatch. "Like mother, like daughter," Chen said softly. "Like grandmother, like granddaughter. Your family has saved humanity twice now." Through the viewport, they watched the escape pod streak toward the node, piloted with precision by the Admiral's navigation officer and Elena's daughter. The quantum disruption wave expanded outward the moment the device activated, rippling across light years of space in an instant. Throughout Alliance space, Ketval ships suddenly halted their attacks. Perfect formations dissolving into chaos as billions of individual minds awakened simultaneously from a shared consciousness. Amira didn't return, but her sacrifice ensured that humanity, and countless other species, would survive. 5 years after what became known as the Liberation, the memorial spire on Terra Nova cast long shadows across the gathered crowd. President Diana Chen Reyes, daughter of Admiral Chen, and the late Lieutenant Amira Reyes, stood before representatives from 32 species. The massive rehabilitation initiative for the newly individualized Ketval, as they now called themselves, had transformed understanding of consciousness throughout the galaxy. Many expressed profound gratitude, describing their previous existence as enslavement rather than unity. "We didn't know what we were missing," said Vertal, the Ketval representative. Their exoskeleton, once uniform gray, now displayed unique patterns that expressed individual identity. "Imagine never having a single private thought, never dreaming your own dreams. You didn't just defeat us, you freed us." The Unified Defense Force, once a desperate alliance, had become a permanent institution with ships and crews from dozens of species training together. Human adaptive response protocols had replaced rigid traditional formations, flexibility valued over predictability. At the Assembly Central World, the human embassy stood as an architectural marvel, combining Earth's lost cultures with Terra Nova's unique aesthetic. Inside the Grand Hall, President Chen Reyes prepared to receive the Assembly's highest honor, the Sovereign Species designation, granting humanity unrestricted colonization rights and a permanent council seat. 3 centuries ago, she began her address. Humanity flooded dying Earth with no guarantee of survival. We adapted to a new world not through domination, but through collaboration, with each other and with Terra Nova itself. When we discovered we weren't alone in the cosmos, we adapted again, learning from species whose civilizations were ancient before our ancestors discovered fire. The Mithril Elder, who had once questioned humanity's potential as an invasive species, now floated beside Diana at the podium. "We feared your adaptability," they acknowledged. "We failed to recognize that adaptation itself is neutral, its value determined by what one chooses to become." The ceremony proceeded with representatives from each assembly species presenting their cultural symbol of recognition. The Zintheri offered an iridescent crystal containing mathematical formulas describing humanity's neural adaptation patterns. The Ilani presented a living sculpture that responded to emotion. The Vorn, once warlike and isolationist, contributed a ceremonial shield inscribed with human battle honors. The Ketval representative approached last, carrying a small device of organic technology. "We bring the final piece of Dr. Elena Reyes Mikhailov's research, completed by those she helped free. With it, we honor her daughter's sacrifice." Diana accepted each gift with dignity, her thoughts drifting to those who hadn't lived to see this day. Her mother, grandmother, and the countless others who had died ensuring humanity's survival across the centuries. As she prepared to conclude the ceremony, a young communications officer approached with urgent news. Diana listened, her expression shifting from surprise to wonder. "Distinguished representatives," she announced, "I've just received extraordinary news. Our deep space quantum arrays have detected a signal matching Perseverance communication protocols originating from beyond known space." Murmurs spread through the assembly as the implications became clear. One of the other Orcs, sister ships to the Perseverance that had brought humanity to Terra Nova, had survived. "The signal contains limited data," Diana continued, "but confirms a successful human colony established around a star we designated HC 7382, approximately 60 light-years from Terra Nova. They'd been developing independently for 3 centuries, evolving along their own path." The assembly hall erupted in discussions across dozens of languages and communication forms. When order returned, Diana made her proposal. "I hereby announce the launch of a contact expedition, not just from Terra Nova, but from the United Species Alliance. This mission shall carry representatives from 15 species who have volunteered to join humanity's reunion journey." As preparations began for the historic expedition, Diana stood at the viewport of her office, looking out at the stars that had once seemed so hostile, but now felt like home. On her desk sat a small hologram, a family photo showing 4 generations of her family. From Commander Elena Reyes, who had led the exodus from Earth, to her own daughter, who would command the expedition to find their lost cousins. The message the expedition would carry encapsulated humanity's incredible journey. "From the ashes of one world, we didn't merely survive. We helped create a better galaxy. Now we invite you to join us." Beyond known space, descendants of the second Ark waited, unaware that their lost family was coming home, bringing with them a united galaxy that neither group could have imagined possible. Humanity had faced extinction twice. Each time, they had emerged stronger, not by conquering, but by connecting, adapting not just to survive, but to thrive among the stars.